which he'd first seen 4 months earlier. We have now discovered that at the trial, the Scottish police knew this. Such a recent sighting of the photograph could clearly have influenced Gauci when he picked out the suspect at the ID parade. But contrary to police rules, this crucial information wasn't disclosed to the defence. The central plank of the prosecution case, that al-Megrahi was the man who bought the clothes, is now massively undermined because of tainted evidence.
Well, that's the kind of exculpatory evidence that is required to be turned over to the defense counsel. And I think that the investigation now is right to be very concerned about why that evidence was not, in fact, turned over. Because that's the kind of evidence that a whole case can turn on.
The trial lasted 9 months. The testimony of the 230 witnesses filled more than 10,000 pages. But al-Megrahi and Fahima chose not to give evidence. The 3 judges accepted there were a number of uncertainties in the prosecution case. For example, the evidence as to how the suitcase containing the bomb was actually planted on the Maltese flight to Frankfurt was entirely circumstantial. But they concluded the case against Abdul Basit al-Megrahi was proved beyond reasonable doubt. He was found guilty of 270 counts of murder. Some believe he was the victim of a conspiracy to pin the blame on Libya. But even those who support his cause find it hard to explain why he came to Malta the evening before the bomb was planted. If al-Megrahi was responsible for Lockerbie, he was the patsy, certainly acting under orders from higher up in the Libyan regime. The big ones got away. Justice may have been done in the eyes of the law, but to many, it has not yet been seen to be done.
I think a lot of people expected more. There was a lot of circumstantial evidence all put together to build this wall. That's all it was. And I think a lot of people expected more because people watch television. It's a neat package in an hour to see here's the crime, here's all the case, how it's solved with all this great evidence, and it's all over. It's very simple. Everybody agrees with TV after an hour, that person did it. Real life's not quite that simple. It's not quite that simple. And I understand people's reluctance to accept that because there's a belief there has to be more. So if there's not more, maybe somebody's hiding something. But all I can say is, we're not.
Al-Amin Khalifa Fahima was found not guilty. He returned to Tripoli an innocent man. Colonel Gaddafi was there to welcome him home. For those that believe al-Megrahi was framed, one fact remains hard to explain away. Libya agreed to award substantial compensation for Lockerbie. Sanctions were then lifted. Tripoli accepted responsibility for what it called the Lockerbie incident. But does it admit guilt? Colonel Gaddafi has now ruled the country for 39 years. He's the longest-serving head of government in the world. His son agreed to a rare interview about Lockerbie, a taboo subject in Libya. Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi carries out diplomatic missions on behalf of his father and is seen by many as being groomed to become the next leader.
Does Libya accept responsibility for the attack on Lockerbie?
Yes, we wrote a letter to the Security Council saying that we are responsible for the acts of our employees or people. But does it mean that we did it, in fact?
So to be very clear on this, what you're saying is that you accept responsibility, but you're not admitting that you did it.
Of course.
That, to many people, will sound like a very cynical way to conduct your relationship with the outside world.
What can you do? If without writing that letter, you will not be able to get rid of the sanction.
So this statement was just wordplay. It wasn't an admission of guilt.
No. I admit that we played with the words. And we had to. We had to. There was no other solution.
So it's just like blood money, if you like, just...
Oh, yes. Of course. Of course.
And what would you say to those people who say that's a very cynical way to conduct your foreign affairs, to conduct your national policy on something so important as this, the murder of 270 innocent people?
First of all, I mean, you have to ask the American and the British government about this. Second of all, you have to ask the families of the victims, because I think they were very greedy, and they were trading with the blood of their sons and daughters, because the negotiation with them, it was very terrible, and it was very materialistic, and it was very greedy, and they were asking for money and more money and more money and more money, and they were talking just about money, 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 money.
American lawyers did negotiate hard with Libya to award $10 million compensation per victim, but for the families, no amount will compensate them for their loss. And some relatives, including Martin Cadman, refused to accept any money from Libya. As for al-Megrahi, he appealed against his conviction, but lost. He's serving a life sentence in Greenock Prison near Glasgow. But now there's a new twist in the story. The Libyan may have suffered a miscarriage of justice. That's the conclusion of the Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission, after a 3-year independent investigation. Al-Megrahi has now been granted a second appeal. If he wins and is released, it will be a massive blow to the reputation of the Scottish legal system. And how will it reflect on the biggest police investigation ever to be carried out in Britain? The Dumfries and Galloway police have declined to comment on any of the issues raised by this film whilst the appeal is ongoing. "20 years on from Lockerbie, British oil companies are now busy doing deals in the desert, and Colonel Gaddafi is no longer an international pariah. He's now a partner in the war on terror."
The confrontation time is over, the hostility is over. Now we are friends. We are trading, doing business together, investing, fighting the same enemy.
That enemy being terrorism.
Yes.
Of course, it's rather ironic that your father was described for many years by Britain and America, the West, as the world's biggest terrorist. And now he's an ally.
Yeah, I told you. It's different. It's a different history.
You're looking well.
It's politics.
Yes. It's a game. Yeah.
And who's winning now?
It's a win-win game.
Those who grieve the 270 victims of the Lockerbie bombing have endured nearly 20 years of anguish, not knowing the full story. With the appeal hearings expected to start in Scotland early next year, there is a chance that new facts will emerge which will either confirm or later arrest more of the conspiracy theories about this senseless and shocking atrocity. That's the very least those families deserve.
The truth is there somewhere, and it's known to a lot of people. If any of them had the courage to come out with it, then we would see a closure. It doesn't matter what that truth is. It may be very painful for us, not just say, oh yes, well, we told you so, but the truth, not to know it, and to know that other people who aren't really worthy of having it, have it, and they're too cowardly to come out with it. That is the thing that I find very saddening about human behaviour at high levels.